Hello, and welcome to our next installment in our Chapter a Day series working through the book of Genesis. If you were with us last day, we had an amazing picture drawn of how God extends forgiveness to us through the finished work of Jesus Christ. We saw the moment when Jacob finally meets with Esau after 20 years of living away, after fleeing for his life, after he cheated Esau out of his birthright and his blessing, and Esau had pledged to take his life as a result. We have the moment where they meet together. And while Jacob's still walking in fear, though he has wrestled with God, though he's understanding and growing in his knowledge of the promise of God and his faithfulness, yet still he is walking in fear, approaching Esau. And we see this incredible picture as Esau runs up to him and embraces him and kisses him, and they weep together. And we saw that powerful statement that Jacob makes to Esau: "For seeing you is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." Well, coming from that part of the narrative, we enter into another part which can be a very challenging part. So I'll let you know that in advance. As we go into Genesis chapter 34, as I've told you a number of times through this series, that one of the great things about the Word of God is that it is a real story. It's a real story about a real God interacting with real human beings in real time. So what we see in chapter 34 is the evidence that these are indeed real people dealing with the real struggles of the human heart brought on by our captivity and under the mastery of sin. So let's enter into this chapter. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." So this part of the narrative focuses on Leah's daughter Dinah, one of the children born to Leah, Jacob's wife. And the story is a very hard story because it involves Dinah being raped by this young man, one of the princes of the land. His name is Shechem. Likely because of the importance that his family has in that area, in that clan, in that city, that Shechem feels that he can do whatever he chooses to do. And so he sees this young woman who has come into the city to meet the other young women. Maybe she's attending the market. We don't know. All we know is she went to meet the women of that land that they have now settled in. And Shechem sees her, desires her physically, and so he takes her and sexually assaults her. We're then told that he finds her desirable, and so now he wants to have her not just in that moment, but to have her as his wife. Now we look at this and are rightly upset by the events that happen, rightly upset by the fact that this prince has just taken this young woman and sexually assaulted her. Equally, we can be offended by the fact that then he's like, okay, so now, I've had her and I desire her to continue to have her physically. I want her to actually be with me. So now I'm going to arrange to have her as my wife. And again, it's reflective of a lot of the struggles in the culture of the time and some things that have continued on. He is a person of power, and he is going to use his power according to his sin nature to get what he wants. So he goes to his father, who is the ruler of the region, and says, I want her. So his father is going to make it so. And in a culture where it was possible to buy and sell people, this is not an unusual request, that he can just do this. It also covers up what he has done initially. If he then takes her as his wife officially, then this rape just becomes part of their relationship. So let us continue on. Verse 5. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. Now there are strong words here, and it's interesting because we get another glimpse into the real character both of Jacob and the real character of some of his sons. So Jacob hears what has happened. Jacob knows that Shechem has raped her, has raped Dinah, and now he wants to purchase her as his wife. So at first, Jacob is silent. He doesn't immediately express any outrage. Then he's willing to meet with Hamor. And we look at this and we go, what's happening here? What is happening? Why hasn't Jacob expressed something? Because it is known that what has happened is wrong. Notice the language here when the sons of Jacob hear what has happened. They are very angry. Why are they very angry? This should not happen. That what has happened to Dinah should not be allowed to happen. In their understanding of the relationship, whether it is tied to the fact that Dinah is part of their household, Dinah is their sister, and they are not to intermarry with the Canaanites, whether that's part of the issue, or more likely it is the fact that they care for their sister, and knowing that she was taken and violated. The person didn't come and offer to enter into marriage with her and for her to have a choice, as Rachel had a choice, as Rebecca had a choice. She was just taken. We see this. This should not happen. An understanding of sin. This should not happen. Verse 8, but Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask for me as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." When we hear this, it's shocking at the way Hamor and Shechem deal with this family. What we see is the difference of perspective. For Jacob's sons, what has happened is a huge offense. It's a wrong. It should never have happened. And Shechem and Hamor are coming and saying, this is a good thing. This is the beginning of a connection, the beginning of a covenant between your people and our people. We're not just looking at Dinah here. Give more of your daughters to us, and we'll give our daughters to you, and we'll grow together, and we'll become stronger together, and we'll become wealthier together. They see it very much from that physical present now. He wants her, whatever you say she's worth, we'll pay it because he wants her, so he's going to get her, and think of how this will benefit all of us. With no thought given to what this has done to Dinah, with no thought given to the fact that this is wrong. So how do we see this family dealing with this? Verse 13, the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone." Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the young men did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, and behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of the city. So we have this picture here. First of all, we see how Jacob's sons begin to deal with this. And it's interesting because Jacob is not part of the conversation. Jacob is still silent. His sons, we are told, use deception. Where have we seen that before? This deception, this is part of the natural character of Jacob. His sons demonstrate the character trait in their natural selves of their father in his natural self. Jacob would get what he wanted using deception. Now his sons are demonstrating the same fallen nature. Because again, these are real people. Just the fact that they are part of the promise of God hasn't changed the fact that they are real human beings under the mastery of sin. So even though they're dealing with something that they see as wrong, they're concerned for their sister. Their solution to it isn't seeking the Lord. Their solution is how can we deceive in order to bring about what we will consider justice. And so what they use is they use part of the covenant. They come and they say, look, we are part of this covenant with our God. And this covenant says that every male shows his commitment on the human side to the covenant through the act of circumcision. This was given to Abraham, and Abraham has circumcised Isaac and all those in his household. Isaac has followed circumcision. We have the understanding here that Jacob has also followed in circumcision, so his sons have been circumcised, and they're saying, so that's what you would have to do. You would have to take on the physical mark of circumcision in order for us to join with you. Now, Hamor thinks this is great. He sees only the benefit. This is not unlike Shechem, his son, who saw only what he wanted from Dinah. So first he physically, sexually assaults her, and then he decides that he wants more, even more than that one-time encounter. So now he wants her for himself permanently, and so he is going to simply have her, purchase her. Now, Hamor is looking at this going, look, here's this wealthy people group that's moved into the land. They are incredibly well off. If we can get them to intermarry with us, then they'll become part of our established people group, and everything they own will eventually be assimilated by us. So we will absorb them, and we will receive the benefit. So yes, we'll take on the mark of their covenant for the sake of the benefit. You see, the flesh is all about getting more. Our sin nature is all about appetite. Shechem ruled by his appetite. Hamor ruled by his appetite. We see this here. But then we see what their natural appetite brings to them. Verse 25. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses, they captured and plundered. So we've seen the wrong that Jacob's sons knew should not have happened. No matter what the culture may have been, what was done to Dinah should not have happened. And they want justice. Jacob is silent. Jacob does not stand up to the leader of these people. When they come and offer all these benefits of allowing this to be excused, Jacob's sons come up with a plan to administer justice. They use deception to cause all the men of the city to be circumcised, because they think that though they will suffer through the circumcision, the benefits will be worth it. And then what do the sons bring about? They use the covenant as a means of death. They use the covenant as a means of death. They take God's covenant symbol of promise to bless, and they turn it into a means to bring about death. And so the two of the brothers, two of Dinah's direct bloodline brothers, go into the city and slaughter the men who've been circumcised. and the rest of the brothers come in and loot the city. And this is done as a way of dealing with justice in their eyes. But it also shows just the general mastery of sin. What Shechem did was reprehensible. How Shechem tried to deal with it was just as bad, because such things should not happen. How his father addressed it and thought he could use this to even give greater benefit to their people, ignoring the fact that what was done should not have happened. Jacob's silence should not have happened. His son seeking justice should not have used the covenant as a means to bring about death. We see the sinfulness of the human heart here. It has not disappeared, even in what God has been doing through the people. So we come to verse 30. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." So it's interesting to see Jacob's reaction here. Jacob, who was silent, when he hears what his sons have done, Jacob's reaction demonstrates still the struggle he has with a sin nature. Jacob fears for himself. We have Jacob saying, "Look what you've done. When the people around about hear about this, if they were to band together, they could wipe me out. They could wipe out our household. And then where's the promise in that? Because of what you've done, you realize how much risk you put us into? Do you realize how much danger you've brought about? How much the people of the land will hate us? As it says, you made me a stink in their nostrils, as if something rotten is in the land that you'd want to weed out, you'd want to get rid of." We still see evidences of that old nature, that same nature that we saw in Abram when he told his wife to say, "You're my sister," to preserve himself. We saw it with Isaac as well. Now we see it here with Jacob. Even with all that God is doing in sanctifying him, we still see this. Because you see, Jacob didn't speak justice. Because Jacob was silent, his sons acted. They acted in accordance to their own sin nature, seeking to deal with something that should not have happened. And Jacob's reaction isn't about what happened to Dinah. His reaction is what they've done and how that will offend the other tribes and clans in the region when they hear how this group that's moved into the land has now attacked and defeated a people group. Notice the final words of this chapter. This is what the sons say to their father after he rebukes them. "But they said, 'Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?' Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" The sons rebuke the father. He's saying, basically, "Father, you're upset with what we've done. But Jacob, do you remember what was done to our sister? Do you remember what was done to your daughter? You were silent. You did not rebuke them. You did not hold them to account. You said nothing. You did nothing. It was as if our sister, your daughter, was of no value. As if she were a prostitute of the land that people could buy or sell. She's also part of the promise. She's part of our people. God is speaking through the sons, even in their sinful state, to continue to teach Jacob something. In the sanctification of Jacob. Jacob, this is a picture of righteousness and holiness. Don't be so fearful of those people in the land that you'll be silent. Here's Hamor comes and like, we're going to buy your daughter. Yes, my son has already sexually assaulted her. Now we're going to buy her. It'll be his wife. This will all be good. Think of the benefit to this. Likely Jacob was silent out of fear. This was a powerful chief of a clan, of a little city-state. These were people of power and influence in the land. They just moved in. They were feeling possibly like foreigners, trying to settle in, trying not to ruffle people's feathers too much, forgetting the promise. Even in the response that we see right here that Jacob makes, he is forgetting the promise. God has promised them. Does that make what his sons did right? Their actions, their deception, their violence, it doesn't make that right. But Jacob's silence as the one holding the promise, that cannot continue. It's a hard story. A story that we don't like to read. We'd like the happier stories like the previous chapter, but we need to see this too because this helps us understand ourselves and our own humanity. When we, led by our sin nature, do that which should not happen. When we wrestle with this, with good and evil, when we try to sort it out often on our own terms, and we struggle with, well, if this is done as evil, then how can we not respond to it in an act that may also be evil? Things to think about. But the fact is, had Jacob trusted in the promise, he had not forgotten that God was with him and with his family, he could have stood against Shechem. He could have stood against Hamor. He needn't be silent. We cannot be silent. When that which is evil is touted as good and acceptable and beneficial, we cannot be silent. That which the Lord says is good, and that which the Lord says is evil, and we cannot be silent. It is important that we recognize this. Even in the son's sinful condition, their statement is true. Should they have treated our sister as a prostitute? Where do we see those who are mistreated? Don't be silent. We cannot be silent. I hope this gives you something to think about, to pray about, to meditate on, to consider, even to ask the Lord, where have we been silent when we should have spoken up? Not to go about it in sinful means and deception, but righteously, trusting in the promises of God. Where should we speak up? In a world that is sinful, in a world where things that should not happen do happen. Thank you for watching. If this has blessed you, please share it with somebody else. Thank you, and God bless you.